With me now, Bronwyn Williams, partner at Flux Trends. Bronwyn, we're talking about digital currencies and more specifically about the Central Bank of China introducing a digital yuan. Take me through this move and to what extent we're going to see a digital currency out of China competing with the likes of what we perceive to be the other key digital currencies out there. Of course, Bitcoin comes to mind straight away.
Yeah, exactly. So what we really see now is this trend towards central bank digital currencies, which are really just sort of the next evolution of our already very digitized economies that we have. But there's quite a big difference between a central bank digital currency, which is what China has started piloting right now. There's a few other nations, including the little Bahamas, for example, that has their sand dollar that are starting to pick up on these things. Is that it actually allows people to own that digital currency themselves. So at the moment, our bank accounts basically work on a ledger system. So it's a credit-based, digitized sort of economy, but it requires a lot of middlemen, a lot of other hands on the deck in order for me to move money to you, for example. With a digital currency, whether that is a private digital currency, like as you mentioned, a Bitcoin, or whether that is a public or centrally managed digital bank currency, which is what we're talking about with China, it does allow for direct peer-to-peer transactions. However, there's quite a big distinction once again between like your Bitcoins or your private digital currencies and once again your central bank digital currencies. They can almost be seen as a sort of yin, the other one's yang, in that the private currencies are decentralized, whereas these central bank digital currencies are highly, highly centralized. So they have been criticized as being essentially sort of fully programmable surveillance money, which is really what they are in effect. It allows central banks a whole lot of different levers of power, both on the domestic front and on the international front. And that's when it gets very, very interesting, as you alluded to, when it comes to China trying to compete now with some of the other bigger currencies in the marketplace, really going after that dollar hegemony, so to speak.
What do these trends hold for the future of the digital currency space as a whole?
Well, it's definitely we're really going to see more and more nations working towards, because it does allow your central bankers that much more control over the monetary supply in their economies. Not just control in terms of the quantity of money, but also in terms of the velocity of money, which is where it gets really, really interesting. And as we know, there are a lot of different nations and central banks that are exploring more heterodox economic models at the moment, like your modern monetary theory, for example, which all require a larger degree of control over that physical side of the market and the monetary side of our economies in order to make these systems even viable on a theoretical basis. And it does really allow that central banker or that central authority in charge of the currency almost godlike control over this currency. So it's the case of that they'd be able to sort of dip into your bank account, add money at will, subtract money at will, even add expiry dates onto these currencies, which is where, as I said, it starts to mess around with the velocity of money. In other words, all of our economic models have to be rethought because it's really changing the rules of the game. Instead of these things being sort of held in equilibrium via supply and demand forces, they now can be directly controlled by a central planner who can force people to spend money by imposing things like negative interest rates, or even, as I said, putting expiry dates on these things. It's also able to have full control over who owns what at what time, and it essentially allows us to, or the central planners, to monitor every single transaction in real time, cut down on things like money laundering and tax evasion on the one hand, but also starts to impinge quite dramatically onto civil liberties and things like privacy on the other hand.
Oh, a big debate I'm sure we're going to continue to have into the future. One thing for sure is the rules of the game are changing on a regular basis. Bronwyn, thank you very much for your time. Bronwyn Williams is a partner at Flux Trends.